It's probably because we haven't had the number the whole time. All right, well, let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. Welcome and happy Friday to you all if you're tuned in with us here on KUHS Denver. It is 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and I am your host, the Self-Care Boss, on our segment branded as Health and Wealth. Now, I always like to bring in some guests into the studio. Sometimes we've got some that are with us virtually. Those are generally folks that either live so far that they can't make it here or don't want to be stuck in traffic for long, or they're people that may be living out of state, and we still think they're incredibly valuable and some great content to share with you. So today's guest, of course, is with us here present, and you know, we usually try and change it up on you. So sometimes our guests are more entrepreneurial, they're individuals that have started up a business, they share their tips and things that they've learned. Other times it is our health kind of guests, so everything that they do is around holistic health and wellness. And every now and then we've got someone that crosses over into both, so their business is also focused on health and wealth. So anyways, it's a little bit of both. It allows me to bring in some pretty awesome personalities, people that I've met throughout all of the years that I've been alive, which hasn't been a lot. You know, I was counting the gray hairs for our producer Henry, and he cannot say the same, let me tell you. So if you are tuned in with us and you've got a question, you can always text it to us. And I know I haven't shared this before, but I now have a good number for you to reach me at, and that's 720-386-0513. Text us in if you've got a question or if you have a comment for us that you want to bring forward. It could be about anything that we talk about. It could be about something random. You know, if it's too random or something I don't want to answer, I might give you some shade for it. But anyways, text it 720-386-0513. Okay, I always like to also move into sharing a little bit about like something that I've had bad happen. I don't know if you've tuned in with me, but I always share something bad that's happened because misery loves company and other people want to feel good about their week, right? And so if mine's worse, then they'll feel better. That's ultimately what I get at. And I can't think of something for this week. Have I had something bad this week?
I think it'd be a strange week if you didn't.
Right? Let's rephrase that. Have I had something different than what has continued to be?
I feel like Henry was doing a pretty good job roasting you when we first got here. So.
I tell you, I think people would pay for that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys could put on a comedy show.
We're a pretty good duo together, for sure. Well, today I have a guest with me that I've known for about 6.5, going on 7 years now, for as long as I've been in Colorado, but he's actually been in Colorado much longer because he's a native, one of those rare breeds. Brian, can I have you just introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Yeah, I'm Brian Head, like Juliet said. I grew up here in Colorado. I was born in Colorado Springs, lived most of my life in the Arvada-Westminster area. Been involved in a lot of different nonprofits in the area. Really passionate about building community, and so that culminated kind of about 10, 11 years ago in the foundation of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, which is how you and I met.
And it was the best choice that you made in that leadership role of opening the organization, is to find a great executive like myself. So anyways, I interjected that. But Brian was very humble with the remarks that he made. He is super plugged into a number of nonprofits that he can speak about, some that he can't. They're private, exclusive, do some pretty amazing things in the community, but he still can't say much. So anyways, he's got some great organizations that he's plugged into, but he truly centers all of his work, I would say, around community service and the impact that it can make on other people. But more importantly, I feel like some people don't understand how fulfilling it can be to go out there and serve. I think there's a strong correlation between feeling good and, you know, your mental well-being when you're going out there and lending a hand. Can you speak a little bit to that benefit when we're drawing a correlation between health and wellness and mindset and everything and community service or giving back?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a quick story. So I spent several years in the insurance industry on the negotiation side, kind of the claims litigation side, and transitioned over into sales. And in sales, you need to meet people, right? Mm-hmm. So I went out and I joined a Rotary Club. And for those that are not familiar with Rotary, it's a service organization where you just have service projects in the community. Typically, your club serves a city, or you might have a couple clubs in a city. And they focus on things like health and wellness. Polio vaccine is a big one that the Rotary Club championed for a long time. Clean water is another initiative. But I really joined the club at first just to make contacts, to try to promote my business. And I remember sitting with one of the guys. He was just this big personality. I loved being around him. And you wouldn't ever know it from talking to him because he was so gregarious and so happy all the time. But he had a really, really hard life, right? So I remember we sat down, we were at dinner club, and we met at dinner, and I was sitting across the table from him, and he starts telling his story, and he tells about how he had a daughter that struggled with an illness for several years, and he had to watch her deteriorate, her body deteriorate, and ultimately she passed away. And a short time after that, his wife had an aneurysm, I believe, walking into King Soopers, and just dropped, and he didn't get to say goodbye to her. And one of the other people at the table asked him, like, you know, how do you survive that? And he said, you know, people ask all the time whether it was harder to have that long goodbye or to not be able to say goodbye. And he kind of spiraled after that, and he said he was, he didn't want to live, just didn't want to be around. And one day he was sitting in his kitchen, and he saw the Colorado sunshine coming through the window, and he just felt like God was telling him, every breath that you take is one that your daughter and your wife didn't get. Make it count. Make it count for something. And so this guy went out and just started serving his community, and had the most electric personality, and I had the good fortune to get to know him, and he was just one of the most dynamic people I've ever met. And that just inspired me. I realized I was sitting in that meeting for all the wrong reasons, and that every breath I take is an opportunity to serve other people. And so it really just kind of shifted my mind. And fast forward, he was an older gentleman. He passed away a couple of years ago, and I kid you not, I went to his funeral, and I got there early, and I still was in the very back. It was standing room only.
Wow.
It's the only funeral I've ever been to like that. And I'm sitting next to these high school kids, and they said, we ditched class and rode an RTD bus to get here to honor this guy. And I thought, well, that's how I want to live. That's how I want to live. And so, to your point about it being fulfilling, it does have the benefit to your business, like I was originally looking for. But more than that, it benefits you health-wise. It benefits you in the relationships that you're able to form with people. And it really gives you a purpose and a meaning to your work that is bigger than just keeping up with the Joneses or buying the next, the next iPhone or whatever it is.
Yeah, and especially, we're inundated on a daily basis with our own lives, that it's nice to get out of our own space and focus on other people, and in supporting them the best way that we can. And I'm so glad that you shared that story. I'm a fellow, once you're a Rotarian, you're always a Rotarian, right? But their motto is the service above yourself, and how they lead that is in these relationships that they foster and going out there and in volunteering and spending their time. So if I were to ask you, of all the organizations you've been a part of, which one has been your favorite? And I promise I won't ditch you here after this or run you over if you don't say it was the Westminster Chamber.
Yeah.
But what would you speak to out of all of those?
That's a hard question. That's kind of like when my kids ask which one of them is my favorite. I love them all differently and equally. I would say so currently I serve as president of Woodrow Wilson Academy, which is a kindergarten through 8th grade charter school in Jefferson County. It's a public charter school, and we just have I just love being able to serve and help kids have a great educational experience. So that's one that's really close to my heart. All three of my kids have gone to that school. My oldest went kindergarten through 8th grade. She's in college now. My younger two are still there.
It's still wild to me.
Yeah. But the Westminster Chamber of Commerce is another one that really is special to me, not just because it helps people have success in their business, which it does, beyond that, it's about building community. It's funny, the more connected we all are on social media, the less personal I feel like we are.
Totally.
And community ceases to exist because it's just this kind of ethereal thing on your phone, where you know, a lot of, as you know, a lot of my best friends are members of the chamber. A lot of the people that we spend time with socially, we've been able to take people and help them grow their business, but also like create opportunities, and kids in our community have an opportunity to stay in the community and get a good paying job. And I remember I took my daughter on a field trip one time, and there was this little guy, she was really small, this is several years ago, and this little guy is really tired the whole time. I can tell he's kind of misbehaving a little bit, but we get back and we're sitting down for lunch, and he's just kind of nodding off eating his lunch, and this was right about the time we were founding the chamber, and I asked him what's going on. He was like, I just didn't sleep very well last night. And so I was like, why do you think that was? And he said, well, it was cold in our car. He's sleeping in his car. And so I just, that was one of those moments where I was like, I can't help every kid that's in that situation, but I can help this one in my community today. And the chamber helps with that, because kids grow up in a spot where they see opportunity happening in their own community in real time, people that they know, and they see a path forward wherever they are today. They see a path out of that, and so that's why I'm really passionate about the chamber and the community that we build through that.
Well, and you know, as you're speaking, you also shared in a way that you have experienced more gratitude through the things that you're doing, right? Because when you're seeing someone who's in a less fortunate place or is struggling with something that you may be taking for granted, right? Like, you know that if you've got the 10 things, right? There's 10 basic things. I don't know if you've heard about this, but right? So if you wake up, you have the roof on your head, if you've got electric, you've got food, you have some amount of money, you have a way to get around, you know, those basic things that you may be taking for granted because you feel like you're not where you're at, or whatever else is pulling you in that negative space. When you start running into those people that don't have those most basic things, it really gets you to dial back and introspect on, man, am I being a little bit too hard on myself and this place that I'm at in life?
Yeah. I had a mentor one time, Reg Cox, who runs an organization called Lakewood Connects. You can find them on Facebook and the internet. Basically, they connect the faith-based community with schools and disadvantaged folks and government services. And they do a really great job of kind of providing a holistic approach to helping folks. But I remember I was going through a really difficult time a few years ago personally, and he and I sat down for lunch, and one of the things he said is, every day find something that you can be grateful for, find somebody that you can affirm, somebody that you can go out and encourage, and find somebody that you can serve. And in doing that, it kind of takes your eyes off of all the hardship that you're going through, and it broadens your horizons. It helps you see, like, there's a big world beyond your problems, and there's a path out of whatever you're going through. So that was another really beautiful moment that kind of formed the things that I'm involved in today.
Absolutely. So you jumped right in. I don't know, you're probably still in diapers when you really started community service, knowing your family and your mom, you didn't have a choice. But for those people that are out there that are, you know, they maybe donate that extra $1 at the counter, or, you know, they see a drive and they're like, oh shoot, I wish I'd known about this. You know, what are some ways that people can start being more activated and get plugged in and get involved in service? And is it an all or nothing mindset?
I think nobody can do everything, everybody can do something. So one of my favorite sayings is, if not now, when? If not me, who? I say that a lot. You've heard me say that. So yeah, it could be little things. So I mentioned the school earlier. We have parents all the time that say, I can't volunteer during the workday because I work, and that's when the school day is. There's opportunities for things like committees. There's things that you can do at home, you know, cutting things out or whatever that will help in the classroom at a later time. It could be something, just very simple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading a book currently called The Comfort Crisis, and it's about how that has affected our mental health and physical health.
Right.
Just being comfortable and somewhat sedentary. There were some statistics that stood out to me, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the statistics will be pretty close. The average Facebook user is actively scrolling on social media for more than 2 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
The average American watches TV for more than that amount of time.
Oh, I
so
believe it.
about 3.5 hours a day is the average that they're watching TV. If you cut out just one 30-minute show, right? If you went from 3.5 hours on average to 3 hours, right? You're still not going to miss your favorite shows, but that half an hour you could spend doing something, and I promise, like it's like a drug. You get addicted to it, and you see the benefit in your own life and in the lives of others, and that's a really cool thing.
That is so funny that you said that, because I had recently, anytime I meet with people, they just feel like I'm not fun anymore because I don't do the traditional, let me just meet up and go to a bar and drink, or
You're too busy scrolling.
I'm too busy scrolling. No, I'm not too busy scrolling. The average is over 300 feet of information on a daily basis that you're reading. I for sure do not generally watch TV, but I do have, what is that, like 4 profiles on Facebook, and
always influencing.
Yes, always influencing on Instagram, and in this day and age, you do have to have all of those pages to communicate to all the audiences. That being said, and separate from that, when people generally like, well, what do you do for fun? And I'm telling them, like, I go out and I do these speaking engagements, I get to share this heart story, I've signed up for this. They're like, okay, but what do you like to do to decompress? I'm like, that is my fun. Like, that feeds me personally. Like, going out there and sharing that, and then talking to someone afterward that relates, like, that feeds me, And so sometimes through that service, you actually end up finding ways that connect with you personally, spiritually, mentally, and are just, as we said, it's a great mental escape from the issues that you're facing. It's overall, you feel better about it, and then you glean awesome things like you just did from these various mentors that you run into along the way. So I've been peppering you with questions. What items do you have for me? Anything before I keep going?
I'll put a plug in for the Westminster Chamber of Commerce's State of the City next Thursday.
Right? See, he's trying to redeem
in
the
Westminster. So if you're interested in what a Chamber of Commerce does or what the city is working on, that's a great event. I would love to connect with you there.
And that's next Wednesday, the 23rd.
Next Wednesday, I think I said Thursday.
Yeah,
next Wednesday,
you're okay.
The 23rd.
So let's go ahead and move into that, because you actually opened this up, and I didn't even think to ask you. Most of the time, people think of a chamber for business, right? Like a chamber of commerce, business. It's obvious. So generally speaking, you also think it's government, and it's separate from government. We work with our municipalities, we work with our cities, but we are our own private sector entity. That being said, is it true that it's just business? And if not, how can a normal resident be plugged in?
Yeah, good question. And so if you follow chambers, I'm kind of a nerd, so I've studied this over the years because I want to be good at what we do. And so did a lot of research as we were founding the chamber and since then. And chambers had kind of pigeonholed themselves into that just business only category, and that may be earned, and it may be somewhat of a false notion, but really chambers are about building the whole community. So you can't have a strong business community without a strong educational system feeding the workforce. You can't have a strong educational system if those kids are starting behind the 8 ball and don't have their basic needs met. So you need a thriving nonprofit community. You and I are both people of faith. I think for all of that to exist, you have to have a thriving faith-based community. Yes. So it's not just a single prong approach. It's a 4-legged table kind of a situation. So I think individuals can get involved. Maybe they're representing a nonprofit. Maybe they're representing their kid's school. Maybe they're just a person that is interested in building community and they want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They can engage, and you can actually join most chambers as an individual person. You don't have to necessarily have a business there to promote.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of different kinds of events, and so do our neighboring chambers that might appeal to one demographic but not the other. That's okay. You don't have to be at everything. Nobody expects you to do everything all the time. That's kind of
our mantra.
My saying earlier. Everybody, or you can't do everything for everybody, but you can do something, right? So engage how it makes sense, and then skip the things that don't make sense.
Yeah. So there's all of these positives that we talked about when we talk about community advocacy, community engagement, service above yourself, the gratitude piece, the key takeaways. We've even talked about finding the time to fit that in, because often I know that's a huge part of anything that we always talk about, and I probably hear that. And it is an excuse. It's like, where's the time, right? And if you pull out a sheet that just has every hour block written, and you start actually keep a tab on what you're doing, you'll realize you've got the time. It's all about selecting the things that you're wanting in there. Is there a downside to community service? Can there be a side of it that you don't see or that isn't good? And what does that look like? And if the answer is no, that's okay. I just want, people that may be apprehensive or are thinking about that more than the good, let's get that out of the way for them.
That's a good question. So I don't know that there's necessarily a downside. What I would say is, where I see people get burnout is when they're trying to do too much. And that's with anything, right? That's with your profession, it's with your kids, it's with whatever the situation is. Too much of a good thing can burn you out on it, right? Like, I love pizza. If I ate pizza every day at every meal, it sounds wonderful, but
don't even finish that sentence. We don't want to hear it, right? Like,
eventually it could have its toll.
Absolutely not.
It might be a price worth paying, actually.
Exactly. Best food in the world, right?
But yeah, I think my message to folks would be, just don't try to do too much. Do what you can, and don't have an expectation of yourself that's going to put you. I always joke, I used to have like a huge Superman complex, and it still rears its ugly head sometimes. And I end up frustrated because I can't solve all the world's problems all at once. But I think if you narrow your focus and try to make an impact where you can, you're going to be a whole lot better off.
Makes sense, for sure. So, did you mention that you're on the school board?
Yes.
For Woodrow? Do you want to talk about back to school at all?
I think kids are headed back to school this week and last week. It's that time of year, so opportunities are ripe for volunteership. So folks that had their kids home all summer and were scrambling to find some things to keep their kids entertained, now might have a little bit of time on their hands, and before they fill that with something else, I would say look to community service. Also, with kids going back, I mean, it highlights the needs. You and I are familiar with Food for Hope. That's another great organization here on the Front Range that helps kids and families get food. So you think about a child going to school and they get lunch, and in some cases maybe breakfast, but what are they doing on the weekends or evenings? And Food for Hope is able to provide food resources for families that have a scarcity. And they're always looking for volunteers to man their food pantries, or donations if you have some extra food. So there's great opportunities as kids go back to school to help out in your community.
So if someone's interested in asking you more questions about the organizations that you're a part of, or maybe to kind of have you as a guide for them, because I know you've also have had guides in your life that have really, tried to encourage certain things that they see potential in you for, or think that would be valuable to you. How can people connect with you? Like, are you on LinkedIn? Would that be the best way that they can find you? And if so,
I think the best way would be to come to the State of the City next Wednesday, the 23rd.
I'm loving this plug-in. I feel like he has redeemed himself with which organization was the best, right?
Yeah. But yeah, LinkedIn is great. I'm on there. Brian is spelled B-R-Y-A-N. Last name is Head, H-E-A-D. You can also email me. It's my first name, Brian, B-R-Y-A-N, @BrianHead.com. That's my email address.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else that you can think of that I haven't touched on that you were really dying? I mean, we got out there the state of the city, so hopefully you guys know that now, right? Like, Brian is desperate to have a +1 to this event, apparently, that is happening next Wednesday. If you want to be that +1, please reach out to him, either by email or by LinkedIn. He checks those both frequently and can connect you to that ticket, so that way you can get out there. But we've talked about a number of things, ways that you can serve, where to get started, avoiding burnout, the benefits, the health benefits, the mental, the spiritual, and even social benefits that come with volunteering and community service. We've even talked about some pretty powerful quotes that encourage you to take a step back and think about everything else and not just you, which sometimes happens when we run into our own issues and problems in life. We've even talked about some pretty great organizations that he's been a part of with the school board, the Westminster Chamber, Rotary Club, and Food for Hope, and a number of others that he has either supported, given his time, or seen a tremendous input and value in. Is that a good recap of everything?
Yeah, I think my closing message, Mr. Rogers, there's a great quote you can look up, but it says when he's feeling discouraged, his mother always told him, look for the helpers. Yeah. And I think I appreciate you having me on. I've been fortunate to receive some accolades for community service, but really, that's not what I do this for. I do it so that I can be around the helpers. The helpers are the people that really drive the community forward, and they're just awesome to me. We talked about some of them today. There's so many others that I could list, but that alone is why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
And I would so encourage people, no matter how discouraging the world looks right now, look for the helpers. And if you can't find any, call me, email me, I'll connect you with some.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's such a great message. I was waiting for you to, put your shoe up and start putting, you said a closing message, Mr. Rogers. I was thinking the end of the show when he would,
teaching you to tie your shoes.
Yeah, that's such a great memory. And then I forgot what I was going to say because I was in the middle of envisioning that, show and reminiscing on those memories. And I'm like, what the heck was I going to say? Oh well, must not have been for it. Nothing ever is. No, thank you so much, Brian, for being on here with us. We, of course, host this on KUHS Denver. In the future, you can always text us in advance during the show, 720-386-01 or 0513. If you are watching this on any of our social media platforms, which we have several, be sure that you hit the share button on this, and so that way others in your network can see that we were live and can tune in with us at a later point. We're here every Friday, so we'll be here next Friday for a short period, and then I take off after that to my international pageant. So I will be back to recap how that goes and everything, but I look forward to seeing everyone next Friday and potentially next Wednesday if you take up Brian's offer of being his +1 at the State of the City for the Westminster Chamber. Thank you all so very much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.